Well, looks like I'll be recording indoors. The weather is truly disgusting, and there have been weather warnings about freezing rain. Yeah, this is gonna be fun. Especially if this crap actually freezes over with all the wet snow right now. It's pouring rain. Uh-oh. That's not gonna be good. Oh well. Well, you don't have to be a genius to figure out that the reasonable tool for splitting firewood is an axe, or in this case, a splitting maul. Nice and easy. But sometimes I'd like to be a little deliberately unreasonable for fun. So let's figure out what would be the best sword for splitting firewood. The obvious answer is none. You just don't use a sword for that. It's total abuse. But if you had to, what would be the best and the worst? Well, let's start out with something that's not technically a sword, but somewhat related. The machete. How good is this for splitting firewood? If you've ever split firewood before, you already know the answer, but guess if you haven't. Let's see. Not very good. And here's why that doesn't work so well. It's the exact opposite of what you want. A proper splitting tool is nice and thick, tapers, so it enters with a point and then it just wedges in and forces the fibers apart and splits rather than cuts. Whereas a thin blade like this tries to cut its way through, and at some point it just gets stuck and potentially twists, and the blade bends because it's thin, and then it gets stuck and really hard to get out. Whereas a wedge like this is pretty easy to remove. So what's the worst possible sword for this unreasonable application? Well, something like this Chinese jian, for example. Now, this is a narrow, thin and long blade, the exact opposite of what you want. No big surprise, it's made for fighting people rather than logs after all. I'm not even going to do that because this would be really hard on the blade, because what would happen is it would enter and it would likely twist at some point, it would flex violently, it would be fixed at one point and it would vibrate and bend at a different part of the blade. So this is a great way to put a lot of strain on the blade and wear it out at best and break it at worst. Now, a long sword is also an entirely inappropriate blade for this. But what about a blunt practice sword? This is substantially thicker. It's still a fairly thin blade, but maybe it can succeed at wedging it apart because of the thicker edge or lack thereof. Kind of. It does actually enter. All right, obviously not great by any means, but it kinda sorta works. So what about a single-edged blade? This is better because it has that wedge shape, since you have the thicker spine and then it tapers from the spine toward the edge. So it could be better at forcing the fibers apart. This is still relatively thin though. This is, by the way, a saber that I designed, which is kind of a hybrid between a yataghan, a Polish saber, and a messer. Well, let's see. It cuts into the wood quite well, and it's not terribly difficult to remove. So this may actually be okay-ish. As far as abusive testing the sword is concerned, this is arguably less harsh on it than chopping, because when you chop crosswise, you actually work against the grain, whereas this is along the grain, so this just needs to split the fibers apart, whereas this needs to sever the fibers. And this way, if you chop into it perpendicular to the grain, it may twist more violently and puts more stress on it. But this is still not great because it can still twist and get stuck and have a lot of force on it. So don't do this at home in case you haven't figured this out yet. Trust the professional idiots to do this kind of thing. For literally no reason other than entertainment. Oh yeah, you can really see how that's twisted. And that's what gets it stuck. If the blade remained perfectly straight as it goes through, it would split it just fine. But so in other words, if I had robotic precision and could guide it 100% perfectly straight down with perfect edge alignment, 100%, and the right amount of force, this should do fairly well. But because I can't do that, I risk bending the blade, and which is not a good idea. Duh. All right, so this staying axe here, you might think, oh, it's an axe. It'll do it just fine, right? Not really, because this is a fighting axe. You can tell by how thin it is. It's a large blade, but it's very thin and really not designed for chopping wood. I'll try it anyway. There's a chance I may mess it up, but for science, I guess? No, there's absolutely nothing scientific about this. Anyway. It can do it, but compared to the splitting maul, not great. Now, to be fair, when I was using the splitting maul, I put a lot more force into it because I know that it'll do it fine without getting damaged. I don't want to damage or break this axe or any of the swords, but for comparison, I'm going to give it a light to medium swing with the splitting maul now. Really easy. Of course, the smaller the pieces get, the easier it is. So how much or how little of a chance do you think the Gladius has? This is a heavier version than what I'm used to. So might be okay. Maybe it can compensate with its weight. We'll see. That's surprisingly good. It very much depends on the wood, of course. The type and the size, and if there are knots, and etc. But yeah, this is pretty good. This is a relatively thick blade for a double edge. It seems to take it just fine. Alright, so what about the katana? It's single-edged and it has a rather thick spine. So arguably it should do it okay, right? The only concern here is if it's traditionally made and the spine is softer than the edge, and this may bend. So we'll see. Oof. So that's one hell of a hand shot. Oh yeah, it does it, but I don't like the way it bends. And this one has a differential hardening, so the spine is softer. So far it's okay, but there's a high risk of bending it. Okay, I think we're all right. This one is quite well made. Good news is this is holding up quite well. So I think if I now go from the other side, it should get through. Ow! This is by far, out of everything I've used today, this is the most hand shock. I think it'll do it eventually, but I don't want it anymore. All right, let's finish it off. Huh? What's that? You want to see how well the Kriegsmesser does? All right. Also single edge, so we have that wedge here as well. Fairly thick spine. Let's see. gets stuck hard. Okay. Good thing is I don't have to worry about it because it's mono steel and very well tempered, so it'll always spring back. All right. Okay. This kind of does it, but it really gets stuck. All right, so I put a new log on and a full one, not split with the maul. And the thing is, with the splitting maul, it can also take a number of chops to get through, but the difference is it's very easy to extract. This one is really stubborn. Yep. Alright, so the takeaway is, if you ever have to, for some bizarre reason, split firewood with a sword, get the thickest single-edged blade you can, and maybe just don't. Maybe just leave it to crazy people. And here's a tip if you are crazy and have done things to your sword you shouldn't have, and there's all kinds of gunk on it. Mineral spirits. That's what people use to clean chainsaws, and it works very, very well. So you just get some on a shop towel or an old rag or something and wipe it down. It just all comes right off. Here, check out how easy that is. Dirty sword, mineral spirits, clean sword. There you go. And then you just wipe it dry and apply some oil to it. What I have here is camellia oil, but you can also use mineral oil. You can even use ATF, automatic transmission fluid. A number of things you can use. Just a light coat and you're good to go. I hope you found it entertaining. Thanks for watching, and check out my Amazon list down below if you're looking for Christmas gifts right now, as well as my Spreadshirt store where you can get this merch. This thing is nice and warm. I like it. It makes for a pretty nifty gift, if I do say so myself. So check it out, links below. Have a good one, folks. Stay warm.